Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Week 25 of Major League Baseball's Power Rankings. This is the second to last week of the season, and I'm sure everybody is knee-deep in the playoff races, and we will certainly get into that. But let's go ahead and get through our Power Rankings here. We noticed that last week we had an outlier or two of a team that was in actual contention at the playoff ended today that would be in the playoffs but were in the middle row, and a team or two was up in the top 10 that was not currently in the playoff contention. Let's see how that unfolds this week, shall we? So the best week of everybody is with the Milwaukee Brewers going 6 wins and 1 loss this week. Best week across Major League Baseball, and that will have absolutely playoff considerations there, which we will get into as we get there. The absolute worst week was Pittsburgh going 0-6. So sorry to hear about that for the Pirates, but you've had a very, very up and down season, and let's see if your last week you can go out on good face there. So let's go ahead and get into it here. What I'm going to affectionately label the bottom row here, the entire row in the last couple weeks here, are your rebuild teams. They're either in full-scale rebuild or they should really consider it based upon how they performed this year. Middle row are all the wannabes and maybe need some fine-tuning for next year. The top row, our top 10, our powerhouses, our elite teams, and our playoff field. We'll get on into that. Coming in at number 30, I'm sure it's to no surprise, the Detroit Tigers. And I'll go ahead and lay out all the teams here. 29 is the Baltimore Orioles, the Miami Marlins, the Kansas City Royals, and the Toronto Blue Jays here. These are all known rebuild teams. No surprise there. Some have a lot farther to go than others. I think that Toronto's probably closer, but being in the AL East is not doing them any favors. In the Central, you need some pieces here. You need some rookies to come up and make a presence there. You have some veteran talent, but the right veteran talent remains to be seen. Miami is on a path. The management has a plan for Miami, and they've just told Don Mattingly they want to bring him back. So we'll see how that shapes out. But I'm not sure how long their plan is for the rebuild. Are they planning to do it in 3 years, 5 years, what? That remains to be seen. They don't exactly release that information publicly. Baltimore, they went on a fire sale last year, and they're just going through the pain of getting people experience and bringing the right talent. And they're in a situation right now where during Showalter years, when he made a public comment that there are maybe a couple of players he would want to keep, the rest of them have just got to go. You've got a lot of contracts in there, i.e. Chris Davis, that need to get off the board. You've got a lot of talent that they don't have much of a choice to play because they don't have anybody ready to take their place in the minor leagues, and they're working on that. Detroit, in a very similar boat, except they didn't go on a major league fire sale. They do have, however, some developing talent in Boyd. So they do have some players who are building around. They have aging players like maybe Cabrera, when his contract is over, he's just probably going to retire. Again, all rebuilding teams, and all have key elements that they need to improve on and key elements that are working well for them. Coming in at number 25, the Seattle Mariners. Also, if they're not in rebuilding, they need to be in rebuilding. After they've sold off Edwin Encarnacion, they really just haven't gotten better during the course of the season. Therefore, they need to retool over the offseason and figure out what they need to do to contend. They are in the bottom of their division, I believe. I didn't keep track of records below the contenders here. Because at this point in time, people in bottom 10 are like they know what they need to do to improve, and they're gonna fade off into the dust when the season ends. Coming in at number 24, the Pittsburgh Pirates, my quote-unquote lovable losers of the National League Central, a team I have thoroughly enjoyed watching, in which they have had top-notch games and then some really lack thereof games. This week, I feel sorry for them. They had an 0-6 week, but hopefully they get to save face and go out on a high note next week. Coming in number 23, the Colorado Rockies. They were my Original at the All-Star break, chosen team to become a wild card upset, not so much. And if they're not in rebuilding mode, they probably need to be in rebuilding mode. Because they have had sparks. I mean, I will give them that. They went into LA over the weekend, and in LA, they won on Saturday. I mean, it's not like they don't have the ability to contend. They just aren't doing consistently. They don't have the pieces to do this day in, day out. And in a very long season, that kills your ability to contend in the playoffs. Coming in number 22, the Chicago White Sox. I believe they are in a rebuild. And they have a ways to go. They really do. Coming in at number 21, the San Francisco Giants. They thought that when they kept on Bumgarner, when they couldn't get the right pieces at the trade deadline, that maybe they could contend this year. Well, as it turns out, they have brief moments, flashes of contention, but they kept on falling to the point where they are outright eliminated from playoff contention. And they need to figure out what they're going to do with their offseason. Are they going to trade Bumgarner? Are they going to build around him? What are they going to do? The trade deadline, keeping Bumgarner, showed they are more than one piece away from contending. So this is our bottom 10 row here, our rebuilds or should be in rebuilds. So now let's go ahead and get into our wannabes or so close but no cigar teams for playoff contention. Coming in number 20, the San Diego Padres. Why am I thinking Dodgers? Anyway, the San Diego Padres gave a lot of promise to the media and to their fan base with their acquisitions with Hammer previous season, during the last offseason getting Machado. Some of their pitching has developed a little bit, but they're still shown that they still need more pieces. They're still building that nucleus. They are better, but still in last place in their division, and therefore, they're probably lower. Yeah, I realize that it's very, very confusing the fact that you have teams with a better record below teams with a lower record, because the point system, it rewards teams for winning in regular innings, but Major League Baseball doesn't care whether you win in 9 innings or in extra innings. So when you have a lot of teams winning games or losing games in extra innings, that hurts your overall point total to this power rankings, and therefore it does make it look a little weird, especially in the middle row here, has the most impact on that, because here you got teams that aren't winning, period, so they're getting those 1 points or 0 points. It's not really affecting them overall in their standings per se, with the outlier over here perhaps, but these teams are, by standings and by points, bottom of the league. Up here, you've got all the point totals, where I get it that in some cases it may look strange, because you can say, well, this team has a better record than that team. Why are they higher or lower? It's the overtime, it's the extra inning games, those point totals that hurt you in collecting points here. I realize it's not the NHL, but in a similar structure, I decided let's see how this plays out and see how this shows the true power of a team. And I can go into a recap of the vision there next week's video, because it is the last power rankings for the regular season, and everyone's going to be in playoff mode, so we can go into a little more detail about how it shaped up, what it was inspired upon, and how it played out in our first year of the state of MLB's power rankings based upon the point system. So, moving right along, the LA Angels lost Mike Trout. Pujols is on the back end of his career, and their pitching staff is nothing like what it was during Weaver's tenure. So they need to retool. They really do. They have some heavy contracts in Pujols and Trout and others, not Trout, but in others, in which they need to either do something with or wait it out. Coming in at number 18, the Texas Rangers had a brutal week. The Texas Rangers going 0-5 all week long. They weren't as bad as Pittsburgh going 0-6, but they went 0-5. They couldn't win a game to save their lives, and it was most unfortunate because they are in a prime position playing New York and playing Houston to play spoiler, have a little fun out there. They just don't have the tools and the weapons to do it. Coming in at number 17, the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds were in a prime position to play spoiler, and they sure as heck capitalized it, going 4 wins and 2 losses. They took 2 out of 3 from Cincinnati. 2 out of 3 on the road in Cincinnati. Then they split with New York. The Cincinnati Reds and the St. Louis Cardinals absolutely did a fundamental key piece in playing spoiler and knocking the Cubs down. Coming in at number 16, the Philadelphia Phillies are one of the few teams here in which their playoff potential is on thin ice. I mean, they're not technically eliminated yet, but when you are 4 and 5 games out with 6 games to go, even if you sweep this whole week, you would need fundamental collapses from the teams you're chasing in the Milwaukee Brewers and the Washington Nationals to leap all those teams. I feel like 4 or 5 games out, 5 games from Philadelphia, with so few games left in the season is just too much to overcome. You had a solid season. You did a good job. There were a few games that hurt you, and there were some series that hurt you, but you can take that into next season and try again. Coming in at number 15, the Boston Red Sox. Another one of those teams, they came off of the World Series last year, and as such, they got kind of beat up by a lot of teams, and two, they underperformed in a lot of ways, leaving them as an outlier. Coming in as a 14, now, same thing as Philadelphia. They are 5 games out. They did a really wonderful job in maintaining pace and keeping up the good fight without Greinke. Totally get that. There were some weeks they were really lit on fire without Greinke, and I give them a lot of praise, a lot of credit for that. Unfortunately, it was too little, too late. They are 5 games over 500, but they're 5 games out of the second wild card. And when you're that far out of the wild card, there's just not enough games to catch. Same thing as the New York Mets. And then we'll get some interesting showing here. The next 2 here. New York Mets, same situation. They're 4.5 games out. They went 2-1 against Colorado and 1-1 against Cincinnati. But fundamentally, because they didn't sweep those series, those teams in Colorado and Cincinnati got to play a little bit of spoiler because they kept them from getting those critical wins to get a little closer. Not that I think 1 or 2 wins would make a significant difference. They're too far out. There's just not enough games left. Coming in, number 12, the Chicago Cubs. The team that the All-Star break I had pegged to win the National League Central has fallen from grace. And this year, having just come off a series where they dropped 2 out of 3 to Cincinnati, and then they got swept at home from the Cardinals, while not technically mathematically eliminated, that does put them 3 games out on the National League National League wild card, and with only 6 games left in the season, that is the proverbial nail in the coffin there. They have one last game in St. Louis today, but even after having lost 3 to St. Louis and 2 out of 3 to Cincinnati, there's just not enough games. They're too far out. They had the chance, and against their own division, fell. So they kind of knocked them out of the playoff contention, and they shot themselves in the foot. It happens. It's unfortunate, but it happens. Coming at number 11, and National League wild card spot number 1, the Washington Nationals. I'm not really surprised the second last week that we have a single outlier in the top 10 here. And we'll get into the team that is not currently poised for postseason, that did get in the top 10 and why they're there. Because Washington Nationals look like they are primed to take the number 1 wild card, to host that wild card team against Milwaukee, and barring a horrible week and surprise performance from Milwaukee or others, because you're looking at Milwaukee being a game back of Nationals. It's entirely possible they can flip-flop or somebody else could come in there. It doesn't look like you're going to have too much competition outside of Milwaukee, because you've got too many teams between the Cubs, the Mets, and the Phillies that are just too far out to knock anybody out of the contention. So you are looking at this point at Milwaukee and Washington for those wild card spots. But being only a game difference, and the fact that Washington has played 2 fewer games than Milwaukee, they have a nice little 5-game set going up against Philadelphia this week, so that will play. So Philadelphia will have the chance to play spoiler for Washington there, and that includes our bottom 20 teams, your rebuilds or should be in rebuilds, and your teams that are wannabes or a few pieces away from contention. Some teams here like Chicago, Arizona, and I hate to say Philadelphia and New York because they need, as highly stacked as Philadelphia is, they didn't play up to the potential. And as strong as the rotation is, some of their lineup is, they didn't play up to the potential there. But at the same time, Arizona, I feel, outperformed their potential, and Chicago just kind of shot themselves in the foot. Outside of this, you have pieces that need a few more in there to contend next year. So we'll see what happens in the offseason there. So, having gone through the bottom 20, let's go ahead and get into our top 10, our powerhouses, and our playoff contenders. Coming in at number 10 and holding the second wild card, the Milwaukee Brewers have fought and clawed their way back into playoff contention. They went from a few games back and had a phenomenal week. They went 6-1. They did exactly what you gotta do for a team that wants in this and has that fire to contend. They took 3 out of 4 from San Diego. They took the first 2 from Pittsburgh. They said, we want to play in October, and we're gonna prove it on the field. Right now, they're looking at playing on the road to Washington, but they are in the top 10. Washington's not, because they played 2 more games than Washington did. That gives them more points. And well, actually, they're the same number of points, but their run differential is better. They've scored more runs than they gave up at a higher degree than Washington there. So their points are equal, but the run differential gives Milwaukee that top 10 favor. And at this point in time, with Washington having games to make up that Milwaukee does not have games to make up, they have the chance to win those extra games and host that wild card game. And if they lose those games, depending on what Milwaukee does, they may or may not have to travel to Milwaukee. We'll see what happens. Coming in number 9, the St. Louis Cardinals have gone from a middle of the group at the All-Star game, and they became that surprise team that came up, slipped right past Milwaukee and Chicago to take the National League Central, and now they've distanced themselves, and they even made a statement by taking the first 3 games of the 4-game series against the Chicago Cubs. They made a statement saying, yeah, we went into Chicago and we whipped your butt. So they are definitely here to play, they're definitely here to contend, and they're definitely primed to take on the Atlanta Braves in the division series. Could they end up with LA? It's possible. But the reality of the matter is LA has 99 wins, the Atlanta Braves have 96 wins with a 3-game difference. A 3-game difference when you have all like 6 games left in the season, it's just unlikely, because even if the Atlanta Braves went 6-0 this past week, LA would have to do 3-3 or worse in order for the tiebreaker of how they did in the season series to come into play, let alone just outright give it to Atlanta. So at this point in time, with so few games left, you're looking at St. Louis traveling to Atlanta for that first round, and then things get interesting. And we'll go ahead and, when I do the playoff breakdown, I will show you how they did during the course of the season, some things that favor each team, some things that are weaknesses, and give you my predictions. But in any event, for the purposes of power rankings this week, coming at number 8, the Tampa Bay Rays, in which they are currently holding the second wild card here. They are, okay? I don't see them keeping it, though. I just don't. Cleveland is 1 game out, okay? And they have been playing hotter than Tampa has. Plus, Tampa has this huge weakness of not being able to win home games. That hurts. However, having said that, it's not like they're not not like they're not staying in without a fight here. They did go into LA and take a game out of the 2-game set. They did host at home Boston and take the first 2 games. So the whole can't win at home thing, yeah. In this case, they did take the first 2 games from Boston, and that definitely helps their case. Whether or not it's going to be enough remains to be seen this season, this week, as Cleveland and Tampa Bay are 1 game difference. And that within Cleveland coming in here, this is your outlier here. This is the team that currently is not holding a wild card spot, but is still in the top 10. And fundamentally, they have the same point total as Tampa Bay, but has outperformed Tampa this week in the sense that they've gone 13 runs more than they've given up versus -1. Now, Cleveland having gone 3-0 against Detroit and 1-1 against Philadelphia, not particularly impressive the fact that you were able to beat up on the worst team in baseball, and you did manage to go to Philadelphia and take one of the first 2 games. It would have been more impressive if they had taken both games, but we'll see what happens on Sunday. We'll see if they win the series outright or if it ends up being a blast from their record. Having said that, the Cleveland Indians are playing hotter than, despite the fact that Tampa Bay had a solid week and they played tougher teams and they won to a reasonably similar degree of Cleveland. Beyond this week, Cleveland has been, over the past month, been playing harder than Tampa. So I suspect that Cleveland could very well take over and end up traveling to Oakland. But right now, it's currently Tampa in that spot. Coming at number 6, the Atlanta Braves, your number 2 seed. They're 3 games out of the number 1 seed. I just don't see them catching the LA Dodgers. They never needed to. They were never projected to. But they put themselves in position to make it a conversation, which is always fun and always a privilege for a team to be able to succeed at that level. Having said that, they are just doing final tune-up here for the postseason here. Do they have what it takes to go to host St. Louis, win that series, go on to LA, and win that series? They have the tools. Whether or not they do, we'll see. And I'll go into that in the playoff brackets and predictions there in a future video. Coming at number 5, the Minnesota Twins. Having taken 2 out of 3 from Chicago White Sox and 2 out of 3 from Kansas City. I'm a little disappointed they didn't sweep one of those series, but at the same time, they fundamentally won 2 out of 3 of both, and that's exactly what you gotta do. They have a phenomenal offense and a decent pitching staff. I don't want to say superior, because even with Beerus and I'm probably butchering that name, and Nova and the crew there, they have a decent pitching staff. They can win games, but fundamentally, they do heavily rely on that offense. They need to. Can they have lockdown games? Yes. Am I banking on it? Not entirely. I am banking that they're going to go into the playoffs and they're going to be riding that prolific offense into some wins there. Coming in at number 4, the Oakland Athletics. Holding the first wild card. They had a phenomenal week, going 5 wins, 1 losses, taking 2 out from Kansas City and 2 from Texas. Not exactly your highest caliber teams, but when you have a divisional game against a team playing spoiler, and they have the ability to actually play spoiler against you, because I don't see them having the ability to play much of a spoiler against Houston, as they got both games against Houston lost. Having said that, they did drop 2 games to Oakland, and they took care of business there against their divisional rival, and that helps solidify their case as the number 1 seed to be able to host that wild card game against either Tampa or Cleveland. Honestly, the way Oakland is playing, I don't know that either one right now favors, but we will find out when the season ends next week, and then we'll provide you a breakdown as to who is favored in what situation for that wildcard game. Coming in at number 3, falling to the low mark of the second half, the LA Dodgers have managed to fallen down to number 3 spot. I think to some degree they're kind of coasting. To some degree they're resting players getting ready for the postseason. They've already shown how strong they are, how resilient they are, how deep they are. Now they're like, okay, we don't have the division yet, but that's a formality. Mostly because other players are, only so many games out in which just a matter of playing out the regular season, it'll be a done deal. I feel that if they don't keep the pedal to the metal and just solidify that, get that ownership of the division, and then prepare for the postseason, they're hurting themselves in the long run here. However, Dave Roberts knows what he's doing with the Dodgers, and I'm sure they have a game plan here. They are playing for the postseason, not to win today's game per se. Will they win today's game against Colorado? Most likely. I mean, they are a very, very strong team, and it takes a lot to beat them. So, at the same time, their performance this week, having gone 1-1 against Tampa Bay and 1-1 against Colorado, makes them fall out of the top 2 spots into the 3rd spot. Coming in at number 2, the Houston Astros have, of all playoff contenders, one of the most favorable schedules. We're playing divisional rivals that are so far out of it, it's just not even funny. After having taken Houston 2 games from Texas, they split with LA, the season finale today, and most likely they're going to win that season finale against LA, but you have to play the game first to find out. Having said that, they have the final 2 weeks against teams that are just going nowhere. I know they're playing Texas some more. I think they're playing Seattle, but I have to check my records on that one. Having said that, they have fundamentally, of the playoff contenders, teams in which have just no playoff hope and are playing for next year, playing for their pride, and playing for today. So they're playing the spoilers here, and the Houston Astros are way too locked and loaded, too deep, too powerful for any of those teams to be much of a serious threat to them. Therefore, they have the absolute easiest schedule, and so while New York and Houston are half a game out of the number 1 seed in all of baseball, the schedule absolutely fundamentally favors Houston taking number 1 seed, and we'll get into that when we go to the playoffs, how that impacts things. I remember in ALCS, that was Houston and New York, where Houston had the home field advantage, and look what happened. They went on and beat the Dodgers in the World Series. Good job, Houston. Coming in number 1, the powerhouse New York Yankees, with which got another blow when, who was it? Torres, I believe it was. Had an injury on the field, MRI came back negative, but they continue to suffer injuries. I swear to God, whoever that personal trainer is, they gotta go. I mean, oh my goodness. I don't know if the personal trainer is at fault for this. I don't know whether the players are ignoring him, respecting him, getting freak incidents, but there are just too many of them. Having said that, despite the injuries, they still continue to win at a rapid pace. Did it hurt them not sweeping LA? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, as far as home field advantages are still playing for throughout the playoffs, and knowing how they failed to win the LALCS in Game 7 in Houston, you knew that home field advantage was absolutely critical. They do not deny it, but those critical games, like they're getting 2 out of 3, but the fact they're not sweeping is potentially hurting their ability to host the ALCS if they even get that far. I certainly believe they will, because at this point in time, they're looking at hosting the Minnesota Twins, and historically, they have had a very, very favorable historical record against the Twins, especially in the playoffs. So, this is our power rankings 1 through 30 this week. I want to know what you think about what I think. And currently right now, as you can see here, 1 through 10, outside of Cleveland, are all playoff bound if the season ends today, with Washington being the outlier here. And here the reality of the matter is, of all these teams here, the only outlier being Cleveland is actually still in the race. They're only one game out with Tampa for the second wild card game, and they have the same point total here, which shows you that despite the fact that you have your teams are suffering from losing points during extra inning games, it's not overall affecting their power rankings here, but it does show that, hey, maybe the teams that have higher point totals and have won more 9-inning games are the stronger team because they did not allow their opponents to force extra innings and drag on the game in the late innings. It's fun for the fans, I get it to a certain degree, because when it gets too late, fans can't stay up and have to take off. It also sucks for the players to have to play that long. If you end up going 16, 17, 18 innings, you've played a second game for free, just try to win the first game. 9-inning games to 18 and 9 times 2. So, therefore, if you can close out a team in 9 innings, it gets your players to be able to rest, get prepared for the next game, lets the fans go on and enjoy the rest of their day, and it shows that you were able to put the team away and end the game. Therefore, by losing those extra inning games, it causes your power ranking here, like for number 1 seed in the Cardinals, they play a much more level playing division. When you've got Milwaukee, you've got Chicago, you've got Cincinnati, you've got a lot of players that are a lot more evenly matched. It's going to lead to a lot more over extra inning games. Whereas when you have teams in the, you're going to have a fair amount of those in the American League East, but you're really not going to have as many in the American League West. You've got a lot of teams with which are either definitive powerhouses or definitively not powerhouses. You're going to have a lot of regular inning games that really give you those extra point boosts there. So realistically speaking, I realize how weird it makes it look in the middle row, especially when you compare points to where the regular season standings are. The regular season standings are just doing wins and losses. They're not doing the strength of the team and their ability to pull off those extra inning wins or shut the team out in 9 innings and move on. It shows a level of dominance for a team. It shows a degree of power, if you will, power rankings. So that makes it. This concludes our field for the second last week. Next week will be our last power rankings for the regular season, and then we get into the playoff fun, October baseball, baby, and we'll lay out the predictions and the strengths and weaknesses of the contenders and give you predictions for how I think they will do during the course of the season. I haven't been giving any hints during the power rankings because I don't feel one is appropriate to do that per se. Because the power rankings, unlike is supposed to be highly objective. And when you're doing opinions upon who I think will win, then you're getting a little bit subjective there. Having said that, I'm also reserving that for our playoff videos. There's lots of entertainment there to enjoy. So let me know what you think about what I think about the power rankings this week. Who should be higher, who should be lower, where do you think your team should go, what they're going to do in the offseason, how they're going to do in the postseason. Let me know and so leave your comment section below as to what you think of the power rankings this week, what you think of your team this week, what you think about the playoffs coming up. And if you just happen to come across this video in Google or YouTube, please hit like and subscribe. It greatly helps the channel. Enjoy the games. Hope you have a wonderful week, and thank you for watching.